You are right, and so are they. That was the title of a message I received on August 28th of 2020. I didn't completely understand it then, but I do understand it today, which is why I'm going to talk about it. What I mean is that we don't understand many things that occur in our lives or how we receive information, which is our intuition that we all have. We don't always understand it or assimilate it, and most times we don't even trust it. And that went on for me for a long time as well. But that message today really made sense. It's talking about our consciousness. Now, we have never discovered anything ever that makes one human more valuable or important than another, other than our consciousness. And so we all come into the world with something we're meant to develop and live, and that would cause our life to be brilliant. And that is within us, and it's our consciousness. However, during certain times, that can be challenging because you have your family, you have your friends, you have all these other people who are going to tell you what you should believe. And then you have to figure, well, who am I? And that's a question that we're always answering. It never stops. We're always answering that as we move through our lives. But what I'm going to do first is share this message. And I'm going to have a lot of other little things that I'll put in there to give you some understanding, because I know a lot of people are looking at our world now and thinking, what is happening? And I'm saying it's happening for a reason. It's not accidental, and none of it's accidental. We are not accidental. What's going on in the world is not that either. It's just that it takes us a while to own who we are and understand and accept our importance, which exists for every single person. But this is the message. Okay, here we are. And this was the date, August 28th, 2020. You are right, and so are they. Yesterday, we told you more of the restructuring of your world would be revealed, and Roger wondered how that would occur. And he even posed the question to his friend. Then he saw it right before him last night. And surprisingly, it was within his family. The family was having one of their regular Zoom meetings, and at some point, the conversation turned to politics. Of course, we speak of the United States, for, as we mentioned, they are leading the way. Each member had an opinion they felt strongly about, and at times could not hear the other's views. In the beginning, Roger was pretty quiet, but then he began to speak up. He said he was making decisions based on how they would define his life and ultimately his life purpose. You each are doing that. Even if you think you are not involved in politics, that is untrue, or you would not be here. All of your experiences provide you with a context to choose who you want to be. That creative sentence refers to the restructuring we mentioned, and none of it is right or wrong, and none of your individual opinions are right or wrong. Still, they are necessary because it is what you chose in this lifetime. You are moving through previously held limitations. We will provide Roger's, which could inspire you to find yours. Roger has long known that finding his autonomy was challenging. He was told that he feared his benevolent nature through a source other than us. While that may seem ridiculous, it was purposeful in his life. You each are here in this lifetime to evolve more. We are using phraseology that you will understand. We are giving Roger a statement that is somewhat shocking even for him. Roger feared that if he unleashed his benevolent nature, he might harm others, as it would give him innate power. Of course, the opposite was true, and his restructuring is happening now. It is happening, and making his choices about politics helped him own more of himself. You are doing the same. It will be easier for you when you know everyone is doing the same thing. Remember, we told you yesterday how it turned out. Now, how it turned out was saying we will be fine, because it seems incredibly chaotic now that we are moving through the world that looks the way that it does. But I know that it is for a good reason, and I've known that for a long time. But I want to talk about that too. It was really interesting today to find, as I said, I didn't understand what that message was about, but it was given on August 28th of 2020. But then my guys, my Wilhelm, this is how I receive information. They we'll always use dates because see, we evolve in consciousness individually over time. As we live our lives, as we grow, we are evolving in consciousness or gaining greater awareness. Well, society does the same thing. And over centuries, we have evolved into being people who can understand the importance of every being, but we haven't always done that. And so what I discovered, I was thinking, wow, they're doing a celebration for Martin Luther King's March on Washington, where he gave the speech, his great speech. And that was on August 28th of 1963. See, we're doing the same thing again. This is another part of evolution. We're trying to gain a higher consciousness, higher state of awareness to know that every person is valuable. We've never gotten there as a society or as a civilization. We're always doing that. And so, but everyone alive now is contributing in how they choose to think of themselves, how they choose to believe who they are. And that's what I am doing now. But it's, we don't know any of these things as we're living our lives, but I do know that every single person has something within them that if developed, if they could find it, if they could own it, that they would have this incredible life. They start contributing to the world, and then our world looks quite different than what it is now. And then when I discovered I had this work to give to people, that was still challenging. We have this doubt, this fear that we all move through. But I'll show you a little bit about that too, because it was so fascinating. When I was thinking about this, I said, when did I start working on this? When did I start knowing this was happening? And the answer was 2016, actually. See, because I put out some things a long time ago. You might find it. I talked about, I sold my $1 million business, which was true. I put that out many, many years ago because I knew that I had gotten to a place where my work would be more valuable for people if I was to give it to them, because that's how evolution happens. We all learn something, we give it back to others. I began in 2019. Now, let me tell you that when I finally started putting things out. But in 2016, I started working on a program, and I called it Overcoming Everything. And I have the draft here. This is so funny to look at it now because I have pages and pages. I wrote out so much, and I'm putting quotes in here from psychologists and philosophers. I'm putting all kinds of things. I had everything worked out as to what people could do because I know it's all in your consciousness. And I know that if you do the work to move through the limitations, your fear and doubt, then you have these great lives. And so I had all of this worked out in 2016. And that's when I sold my business and I moved out of my studio. And I said, I'll go broke because I don't care, because I have to do this because I know where the world is going and this is going to be much more helpful. And I called the program Overcoming Everything. And everybody said, don't use that name because nobody will believe it. I said, yeah, okay. So I changed it, and no one did believe it. And so I did change it. And they still don't believe me today when I talk about, oh, you could change anything. You could have the life that you want to have. And then I called my program when all the different iterations that I moved through. And then finally I ended up with Your Last Development Program. And the reason I did that, because I know that we all develop the same way. It's within us. It's our consciousness. But over civilization, people come along and develop certain things that they give back to others, and sometimes they turn out to be philosophies. And that's what I did. I created a philosophy that could help people understand their intimate connection to source, because see, I call it your soul mission, because that's what everyone has. We are all connected to source, the ethers, or whatever you want to call it. I love using that term too, because see, Napoleon Hill, who we think of as many people say he's the father of personal development or whatever, but he wrote a book called Outwitting the Devil. And if you read that book, it'll give you so much information, because see, he was afraid of putting it out. Well, he wasn't necessarily afraid, but everyone else around him was afraid of putting that book out, and he couldn't use that title. And it was only released, a few years back. But if you read it, it'll give you a whole bunch of insight, because he talked about the things that happened, even for him, that this doubt and how we can we drift off. He called it drifting, when we leave our path of what we're supposed to follow, because everyone has that. And I know that is true now. So as I'm looking at all of this, I thought, when did this start for me? How could I have created a philosophy? And then I did something which was really very cool. I said, and many people will get this. A lot of people will remember this, because I said, why did things happened to me at age 12. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh yeah, something happened to me then too. Sometimes it's trauma. And mine was a lot of trauma at age 12, and a lot of withhold and fear, a lot of things that just really took over my life. But it's a developmental thing that happens. And so I said, let me look that up. I love the fact that we have these search terms in AI that we can find things now, because see, back when I had to do all of this before, I didn't have any of these. And even when I started receiving my information, my messages, when I started receiving Wilhelm, that was in 1988, and I wrote it down longhand every single day. And what it was doing, it's mindset work, but it comes from a different place. It's cosmic consciousness, which is why everybody, so many people relate to it. It's, you've heard this, and a lot of people have talked about it before. People say when they read the messages, why does it feel like it's speaking to me? And people in my program are finding that same thing. They're resonating. Why does this resonate so much? Because you're connecting to a universal consciousness, which I have been downloading and talking about for a really long time. But we're moving through this time in our world, which my guides have said it's a restructuring, and that's why it's so chaotic. And the way that it turns out is depending on what we each choose to do. And when we choose to love who we are, when we choose to work through the limitations and own it, wow, we're going to have a different world. It's going to take a while though before we get there. So anyway, this was so fascinating, because when I was putting this together, I told you I was using quotes from other people that where you could understand from philosophers or whatever, and like Aristotle, Plato, and then I used more modern day mystics. I used all kinds of people because I wanted to show that consciousness it evolves over time. Nobody has a monopoly on it. It's never done. And we each decide how much we're going to accept, use, implement, and use in our lives to live better lives and to create a better world. That's why everyone exists. Everyone's not going to do that, which is what that message was saying as well. You are right, and so are they. And so to try to get someone else to believe you and what your beliefs are that might be coming from this really inner place, because we all have that. That's not your job, is to do that, but your job is to believe yours and to own who you are. And at this time, particularly to become happy, to become prosperous, put a different kind of energy into our world. But it's so fascinating when you look at this. I did a little search, and I want to show you this. Okay, so this is what it was. And I thought this was so fascinating. Because think about how we develop as individuals over time. It's not going to be the same for everyone. We know our ages and the way we process things is going to be different, but they're general things that come about. And so this is it. Age 12 is an important age in human development for a number of reasons. Physical development, puberty begins in most children, around that, leading to changes in their bodies. So we start forming different ideas, basically, about who we are and our beliefs. We're always developing everything through our consciousness. There's nothing else other than that. And then cognitive development, that's when it happens. So if we've had some trauma or something that happens through us at that time, that could impact us as well. But the other thing that could happen is that we will be introduced to something that could awaken this inner knowing that we have. It's, oh, this is who I'm supposed to be. Maybe this is my life path. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to live. And so as I looked at all of this and put it together, I said, oh, 1963. That's fascinating, because see, I was 12. And what happened was that speech by Dr. King impressed me so much. I said, yeah, he's saying something that we should all understand. Everyone, he had a dream about who we could be, basically, and we haven't reached that yet. And that's why we're moving through this now. But there's a continuation of time. Everything that is occurring in the world, and I've written all of this over the last several years, and you can find all of that, but everything that's occurring now has happened before in our history. It's just not happened in this way because we have different galactic configurations. We're all energy, and the energies in the world are very different now, and we're going to move through it for, like I said, another more than a year, actually. But when we put our effort into becoming who we're meant to be, then everything begins to change. But it was fascinating to make those connections. I've talked about in some of my presentations, I've talked about how I was impressed so much by Dr. King, but I had no idea that I received that message in 2020 on that day, because it was an important one. However, I can even tell you other things why the United States is moving through so much, and we're going to see more of it, because it's again, this is about energy. Doesn't matter what your political party is or ideologies or any of that, it's your energy. And if your energy is going to be of hate and judgment and violence and all of that, then we're going to have a really horrible world. But if your energy is going to be about loving yourself, working through the old limitations, because they're all old. And this is why I'm talking about Dr. King. That was a different time. I can remember it because I lived through it. So I understand. And we're moving through another one now. And so when we come together and start, oh, wait a minute, this makes sense now. Then we start to have different lives, and then we make a contribution to the world that cause a different world. We only exist in our consciousness. Again, we have different ways of accessing that. Mine was different. I did all the traditional things as schooling and coaches and therapies and everything like that. But I also did Wilhelm. And it is a thing that every single day I did it. And over time, it changed my life. It healed me. Mind, body healing is possible. I did all of that. And then you start to change your brain, because that's where everything matters. When you start we understand neuroscience now, so we do get that one. But there's a way that I access things. It wasn't related to anything going on now. It was cosmic consciousness. And so the reason I mentioned Napoleon Hill, he had a wonderful term about this, because people don't like using God or anything, something like, we get kind of triggered with certain words. He said the ethers. And when you think of that, what that means is that it's just energy. Everything is energy, and there's no human who is born less than another. It's only in our consciousness and how we choose to think. And that's a progression that happens over time. And it's the same thing in our society. That's what we're moving through now. Well, I will also say that you exist in this world at this time you have this tremendous opportunity, because what we choose to do in our lives now, how happy we decide to become, how prosperous, how we decide to do all of that, that's going to create a different world that we're going to leave for other generations. That's all that's going to happen. No one is creating the world other than every individual, and we do that collectively, but we do it through what is unique, what is authentic, and what is within us. That's the only thing that matters. I know that helped you a lot. And also, I'm doing a channeling session on Wednesday, because it's a full moon, and it's going to be a powerful one. And I'm telling you, you're going to understand so much more on that day. That's why I'm holding the session. I'd love for you to show up. And if you can't be there in person, just register so that you can receive the replay, because it's going to be a great one. When you understand who you are, own who you are, love your life, create something great, not only you're going to be happier, but you're going to help create a much, much better world. All right. See you guys soon.